Gail Ewer, Greater Public's Member Services Manager. I'm just popping on to give a quick shout out to Promptly, our sponsor for this session, Diversity and Pledge, building a diverse donor base through on-air fundraising. If you haven't heard of Promptly, it was designed with help from 25 stations. It lets you build your entire pledge break plan in minutes. If you think that's impossible, sign up for a 5-minute demo at the Promptly booth. Promptly has helped stations improve drive results, increase new donors, and increase new sustainers. Promptly is offering a limited number of free trials for the fall. To sign up, visit the Promptly booth under the Sponsors tab on the left side of our conference platform, Socio. Now I'm going to hand it off to Jay Clayton, Greater Public's Individual Giving Advisor. It's all yours, Jay.
Gail, thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Welcome to the PMDMC. After months of planning, we are finally here and excited to be here with you today. If you have questions or comments or need anything during the session, please go to the chat and put everything in there. We will monitor it throughout the session and follow up with you as needed. And I'm very pleased to introduce our panel for this conversation. First, from Houston Public Media, I want to welcome Inessa Rios-Izude. Welcome, Inessa. Thanks for being here.
Hi, super excited to be joining today and glad to be on the meeting. It's going to be great.
We're glad you are. Also with us today from Public Broadcasting Atlanta, WABE, Jamie Green. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're glad to have you and both of you and your perspectives here. And last but not least, also Jamie's colleague in Atlanta at Public Broadcasting Atlanta, Aisha Rashad Hyman is here. Welcome, Aisha, and thank you for being here.
Oh, absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you, Jay.
I'm glad you're here. So I guess we're going to kick things off.
Yes. So here's where we want to start. Jay, I had really open and honest conversations about race. Jay, we wanted to discuss.
Hold on a second. I'm getting a little bit echo here. I just want to ask our producer to turn off your mic if you could. Try it again.
Did that fix it?
Say a little more.
Okay, I'll go back to where I was going.
You got it now.
Good. All right. So what we wanted to do first is we wanted to make sure that we create a space that feels safe, where we can be bold and brave and ask questions. Maybe the questions that we wouldn't normally feel comfortable asking at our stations or at our organizations about race and equity and diversity and all of that. This is a space where you can do that. We really want to encourage you not to hold back at all. If you got a question, there's no such thing as a dumb question, a silly question, uncomfortable question. We want to get comfortable in the discomfort, because that's the only way we can even actually have honest conversations about race and racism and class issues and diversity and all that good stuff. And so Jay and I wanted to just be really honest with you all about the conversations that we've had. So Jay, do you remember that time that I said, hey, do you consider yourself a white man?
I do. I remember it well. We were on a Zoom chat. I've known Aisha for a couple of years now, and we were on a chat recently, the last few months. And you asked me that question, do you consider yourself a white man? And I wasn't quite sure at first what exactly you meant, but as the conversation progressed, we kind of unpacked a lot in a few minutes. And the sense that I don't, that I'm a little aware of how people of color may feel, the way they're treated because of the way that I'm treated. I have albinism. Some people know that, some people don't. But I do, and you get a lot of weird looks sometimes, you get a lot of odd questions sometimes, but when somebody asks you about it constructively, what it means, how it affects you, how you feel, and all those kinds of things, it's actually a very productive conversation to have, because you feel safe knowing that the way it's been approached, and you feel like, okay, this is a person that I can talk with about this who kind of gets it. And so we had a moment where we connected over that and realized that we're a lot more alike than maybe not.
Absolutely. And so we want to encourage you to have those same kinds of fearless moments where you just ask the burning question that's been in your mind and not be afraid to do so when you have a colleague that you have trust, a foundation of trust and respect with, feel free. And this is that moment as well. We respect you and trust you. This is a safe space. Next slide. All right, so I'm representing Public Broadcasting Atlanta, very proud Atlantan, and I want to share a little bit about our market, our metro area. We live in one of the most diverse metro areas in the United States. We're very proud of that diversity of our listening audience and our viewing audience. It's in fact identical to Atlanta's racial diversity by percentage. We have worked hard to achieve that and are working to maintain that. But like most American cities that are very diverse, Atlanta is also very segregated. We're the second most segregated city after Chicago in America. At the same time, WABE's programming, our community engagement efforts, our fundraising efforts, when we put all of that strategy together to do the work that we do, one of our intentions, our primary intention really, is to foster a sense of community despite the segregation that exists in our city. Next slide. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about the DEI that's in the DNA of our organization. So the photographs that you see there, that top row, those are our on-air hosts for Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and our local programs, Closer Look and City Lights. And then in that second row, you see photographs of the folks who lead our on-air fundraising efforts. Actually, I'm going to be transitioning off that team, but nonetheless, we have a really beautifully diverse group. You're seeing representation of multiple religions, races, ethnicities, ages, generations, members of the LGBTQIA community, all represented. And that's just the handful of folks who work on most closely with our on-air fundraising campaigns for radio. I'm focusing on radio in my part of the presentation because my colleague Jamie Green is going to really drill down into TV. But I just wanted you to see that we are benefiting from the fact that we have a really diverse team. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect. Next slide. So we all absolutely have opportunities to learn more about the community we serve, more about the communities that we're not necessarily a part of culturally. None of us know everything about every culture or every community. So we all have areas to grow. And so one of the things that we try to do when we start our strategy is to really think about data, start from a place of understanding what is the reality, what does the data say about our city, about our metro area. So the questions that we ask ourselves are, what is the data telling us about who really is listening to our station, who's not listening to our station? Is there a part of our population here in Metro Atlanta that's growing that we should be paying attention to, or that's becoming more influential in our market or in our city? Are we programming to a diverse audience? Are we really asking all of our listeners to give? And that's a really key question. Sometimes we think we're asking, but we're not. So really thinking about, are we really speaking to a diverse audience? And then also, as staff transitions happen, people get hired, people leave, looking at our staff team, making sure that our staff team is representative of our city. And just because we have diversity on our team doesn't necessarily mean that everybody feels like they're being heard. So making sure that we're listening to our team. These are all the things that we think about before we even start planning our on-air fundraising campaigns. And one thing I want to point out, that's actually a photograph from someone who was responding to what happened here in Atlanta. One of the spas targeted in the shooting spree in March is located about a block away from our station. And while our staff did a tremendous job covering this story, we understood and still understand that we need to be much more proactive and intentional with our engagement with the Asian and Pacific Islander community, as well as the Latino and Hispanic community here in Metro Atlanta. Next slide. So one of the things that we've learned from just paying attention to the comments and feedback that we receive from our audience is that people really want to see themselves. They want to hear themselves on our air. They want to see themselves in our materials. So we want to make sure that we look and sound like the community that we serve. And so what does that mean in terms of putting together our on-air pledge drives? Well, for radio, that means that we don't shy away from challenging stories. So when we're looking at the pitch clock, we're not just going to pitch around the upbeat stories. We're also going to pitch around the serious stories, especially if those serious stories are of primary concern of specifically demographics in our community that we want to make sure they know that we're listening to them, that we're here for them. So I could be more specific with an example, and I will actually when we play one of our testimonial clips, but not yet. The next thing that we look at is our photographs that we're using in our social media posts, in our emails, in our website. Are those reflective and representative of our city, of the populations we serve in our city? All of our graphic design, our scripting, our music beds, the thank you gifts, the conception of the thank you gifts, the design of them, how we photograph those, as well as our testimonials. So we're going to share specific examples of what that looks like and sounds like. But right now, I want to share a testimonial from Teresa Brown.
And I live in the Kirkwood neighborhood. NPR has been a part of my life for 30 years, but it has been a part of my sons' lives for all of their lives. They are 13 and 11, and they know the shows. They know the personalities. I hear them talk about it when I'm not present, when I'm in another room. And that really means a lot to me because it is a station that I feel proud of and that is exposing them to information that they may not be getting in other places.
Aisha, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Jay. Sorry about that. So I really wanted to play Teresa's example of testimonials that we record in the community when we're doing events, or even after a drive, we'll reach out to our donors. My colleague Dave Barriswain does that. He'll look at the member comments, particularly from the new folks who joined us in the last pledge drive, and follow up with them and ask them for a testimonial. But we're very intentional about making sure that we have a diverse group of testimonials on our air, because again, we want to sound like our audience of listeners. We want our audience to feel like they're hearing someone like them on our air. But Teresa's testimonial specifically, I used that one around stories around how young people are having to process race and racism. So any news story around critical race theory in the classroom, or even conversations about how young Black men need to think about how they interact with the police. So sometimes I would think about Teresa and use her testimonial. So right there is a picture of one of my friends who's a supporter and listener and a contributor occasionally to WABE, and they've got two sons. So I have them in mind sometimes when I'm pitching. We're going to play another testimonial from a major gifts donor, Joe Barry Carroll.
My name is Joe Barry Carroll, and I'm from Southwest Atlanta. I'm a member of the Cornerstone Society. The Cornerstone members, they're a variety of people from a variety of places in life. There are school teachers and retired people, but they're consistently, in terms of personality, these are people who are, curious about a lot of things. There are perks, there are benefits. You're invited without additional charge to concerts, lectures. You get a chance to meet or at least listen to some of the national talents as well as the local talents. It's exciting. It feels like you're doing something good in terms of the contribution to the station, as well as you're getting some value.
So Joe Barry Carroll's testimonial is a great example of why representation matters. We recruited a lot more new major gifts donors with that spot and that partnership that we've had with Joe Barry Carroll. He's a retired NBA player. And one of the things that he says when he's helping us to talk about our Cornerstone Society is that you don't have to be a celebrity to be a part of what we do here at WABE and to support it at the major gifts level. And other folks have responded. They feel like if Joe can do it, I can do it. He's speaking directly to his community and they are responding. So we just wanted to share those examples. And through that work, we're expanding the station's exposure to diverse audiences as well. So let's talk about scripting. The next slide. So before we start the script writing process, one of the things that I like to put together for our team is a messaging matrix. This is a combination of an exercise that I learned from my early days as a pledge host on the PBS side, on the TV side of Pledge, and then blend it together with the values, the PRPD core values. So that's how this came to be. And so you're going to see some of those values, that some of those come from PRPD. But then next to that column of values is our connective tissue. And that's so very important because what we're trying to do is think about what is our audience of listeners, what are they really concerned about the most? What do they value the most right now? And how does the content or the story that we're telling at that particular moment in our owner campaign speaking to what they value? And then we translate that into a pitch. So you see just a few examples there, but diversity, equity, and inclusion is most definitely one of the values that we write scripts around. And we've actually shared some of our social justice talking points for on-air fundraising along with this full presentation in Socio. So you'll be able to see our scripts, our full messaging matrix, because this is just the first few rows. We go much deeper than that into other values. And feel free to download that. Next slide. All right, music beds. This is one of my favorite ways to diversify our on-air fundraising campaigns. Music beds are another great way to incorporate DEI. You can tap into your local music scene by choosing music from local musicians. You can choose music that represents different cultures and genres and generations. Music can be a bridge that connects us and also help to create that connective tissue that we just saw, that we just talked about in the messaging matrix. It can help reinforce that because music creates such a wonderful emotional connection as well. We have a list of about 200 songs that come from all over the musical spectrum that we pull from, and we're always building that list and adding new songs to that list, and we're sharing that with you all attending this session as well. But we have an example of how we really use music in our pledge breaks, and we're not going to play the whole pledge breaks, but just a snippet of it. And so let's start that now. Now, so we kind of go from that and we kind of fade the music out and we go into the rest of our pitch and follow the break structure, the best practices that you learn about with Greater Public's wonderful tool, break structure tool. So we let the music help us transition into the break, especially at critical times in the drive when either we're ahead of goal and we're doing really great, but we want to maintain that momentum, or we're lagging behind, or we're down to the wire and it's the last few minutes of a special offer, a sweepstakes, or maybe even the end of the drive. And I think that particular clip we just heard was us coming down to the absolute end of the drive. So we took some liberties because I think we were ahead of goal and we were doing really well. All right, so next slide. So that you're seeing there is a reflection of the diversity of the folks who are working on the air as well as behind the scenes. So on the mic and off the mic. In order for us to foster the next generation of public media storytellers, we must diversify the crews we hire, the producers, the PAs, the editors, the directors, the camera operators, all of that. A diverse crew is essential to the cultural understanding and nuance in how we present our programs and pledge breaks, especially when we're thinking about DEI. Sometimes a crew member or a producer or a PA will notice something about how you're representing a culture or telling a story about a culture or a group of people that maybe you didn't understand because you weren't a part of that culture or you're not representative of that group of people. So it helps to have that diversity even in your crew. To recruit diverse production talent, we reach out to technical colleges, organizations like the National Association of Black Journalists, organizations like Who You Know, Toastmasters, Atlanta Latin American Association, Asian Women in Business. All of them have been quite supportive in my experience of working in public media the last 15 years. They are looking for opportunities to connect with their local PBS or NPR station. So you can reach out and I'm sure you'll get a great response. Next slide. But I do want to make next slide. So I do want to make the point that there's a difference between inclusion and empowering your staff to create diversity in your team. That picture on the left is an example of inclusion. That's me with the first crew that I worked with when I first started in public media many years ago. And you see lots of smiles there. We had a wonderful team. I learned a lot from those guys, loved those guys. But I was the only woman and the only person of color on that team. The picture on the right is when at that same station, I was empowered to recruit the crew. And so through my network, through those kinds of associations that I mentioned, I was very intentional about creating a crew and adding new, younger people, more diverse folks into our crews so that we can, again, be cultivating that next generation of storytellers for public media. That's so important. Next slide. All right, so thinking about your thank you gifts, you can even incorporate DEI into how you design them as well. So we are intentional about choosing artists and designers who champion diversity. So the young woman, India Nabarro, who is a wonderful supporter and fan of our station, she is actually known for creating artwork that really does celebrate the diversity and the vibrance of Metro Atlanta. And so you're going to see iconic places on the wealthy side of town and iconic places on the side of town that's not wealthy. You're going to see representation of classical music and hip hop in her design. That mug actually turned out to be one of the most popular thank you gifts I think we've had in the history of the station. We can't even keep them in stock enough. And I think that part of the reason is because it is representative of the diversity of Atlanta and what makes us so special and unique. So think about that as you're designing your thank you gifts. And then even how you present your thank you gifts, who's wearing them in your photographs, whose hand is holding your thank you gifts in your photographs. You have an opportunity there to, again, allow diverse audiences to see that you are here to serve them and you're here to support them and you see them. Next slide. We are really excited to have some new folks on our marketing team. And one of the things that they came up with, shout out to Sherry and Tracy. But one of the things that they came up with was reaching out to social media influencers who are also outspoken and known for the work that they're doing to raise issues of race or have conversations around DEI here in Metro Atlanta and how we can, as a community, work on those issues. And so those are the folks who are modeling our thank you gifts for this last cycle of on-air fundraising. And together, we were able to reach an additional 20,000 followers collectively. Those are just a few. I think there are about 10 different social media influencers who represented a broad cross-section of our city. So we had folks who really were influential in the artistic Jewish community. We have folks who were representative and really influential in the LGBTQIA community in Atlanta. We had a cross-section and it was a really fun process. And the social media influencers loved it. They absolutely loved it. And just kind of, I think, just made us look more cool. Next slide. All right, so I'm just going to give a general overview of what we're doing with DEI and our TV drives. And then my colleague Jamie Green is going to give you more detail on that. But DEI is not just something that we think about, especially for TV. Well, actually in radio too, but especially for TV. It's not just something that we're thinking about for Pledge. It's something we're thinking about with our programmers all year round. Beyond heritage months like Black History Month or LGBTQ History Month, beyond days like Juneteenth, we're thinking year round and tracking year round how much DEI content is in our schedule. We actually label our programs DEI in our grid. And somewhere between 10% and 25% of our content is DEI content year round. And that really just depends on what's available to us at the time. Even when we have a pledge drive where we might not be receiving lots of diverse content from the national providers, the typical national providers of TV pledge content, what we often do is look for opportunities to pledge around core programs that have the diversity that we're looking for in our schedule. For us, our top programs by far are programs that are DEI focused for pledge. In addition to our TV broadcast, we produce radio spots that encourage our listeners to tune into those programs. But we're thoughtful even about DEI in that. So we think about whose voice are we using for voiceover for our radio spots when we're sending folks to tune in to our DEI content. So are there diverse voices? Are there male and female voices? Are there African-American voices? Are there Latino voices? We also are very thoughtful about that in our emails. What are people going to see in terms of the images, the photographs? Which programs are we choosing? Same concept with our social media. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jamie Green, to talk more in depth about specific examples of DEI in our on-air fundraising campaigns for TV.
Thanks, Aisha. Aisha mentioned earlier, DEI is in our DNA. I can't think of a truer statement as it relates to our content at WPBA. And as a team lead, it's been a part of my personal mission to elevate diverse voices by utilizing our platforms, digital, radio, in addition to television, and to introduce our local audience to a wide range of perspectives with our pledge content and core programming, as Aisha just mentioned. And with television, our process, well, it's not simple, but it's not also complex. We make sure our content is not only engaging, but it's intentional. We want to make sure that we remain in tune with what's happening in the world around us. And of course, most importantly, with our local community here in Atlanta. Next slide. And so a great example of this work is how we took Independent Lenses, Doing It in the Park, which you see right there, a film that is centered around the love of basketball and the heart and the soul of the hip hop culture. And if you know anything about Atlanta, well, we're the mecca of the hip hop scene here. And I particularly enjoyed it, not just because I love basketball and hip hop, but because we broke away from time period conversations. This program really did allow us to create a space to connect with the Latinx community here in Atlanta. We offer premium, that included posters, summer camp vouchers, and events such as the film screening featuring The Film Zone by Beto Garcia. And he also participated in our community full court 21 basketball tournament. That's right, we did a full court tournament. And a large part of our success, well, it was attributed to our local community partnership with the Atlanta Hawks, whom we featured in our pledge breaks. Next slide. And at WPBA, we want to continue, and we still do, to strive to bring new experiences to our donors while strengthening our relationships with community partners. So we thought, what better way to do so than to expand the Finding Your Roots platform by developing Finding Your Roots Atlanta Edition. That's right, we made our own version of it. We partnered with African Ancestry with our DNA Kits and More premium offer, and partnered locally with the Auburn Avenue Research Library for a DNA reveal event, for which we used as a donor, cultivation, and community event. And now we're going to take a look at our testimonial on Finding Your Roots Atlanta.
I just wanted to know where my roots really started.
I was always curious. I had a lot of strong feelings about my father's side. I was really connected to my mom, so I wanted to know both.
I belong somewhere else beyond America. It gave me a definition.
It's just that I think everybody, African Americans, should invest some time in finding out what their ancestry is, because it really does influence who we are, what we do, and what we become.
Take the test. Not tomorrow. Take it today if you can. It's the most exhilarating thing you'll ever feel.
I said, get off the fence in a hurry. Jump off the fence. If you haven't taken the test, you should. And do like I did, take both.
And it can't help but enhance who you really are, to know where your roots are.
You're muted, Jamie.
Okay, thank you, Aisha.
Yeah, so start with the out on film.
Sure, no problem. So our mission at WPBA is to make sure our programming and premium offers and experiences speak to all communities. And so our partnership with Out on Film and Aid in Atlanta brought awareness by offering a platform for the LGBTQ community to share their experiences and to amplify their voices. We pledged around core programs such as Stonewall Uprising, The Untold Stories of Amistad Maupin, and About a Boy. LGBTQ community has been supporting our station well from the beginning, and we are so proud to continue to strengthen this connection. Next slide, please. And speaking of connections, Prince is one of those artists that connects so many of us for our love of music. And you know, Prince unapologetically celebrates diversity while creating safe places to be, frankly, who you are. And so it was only right when PBS released Prince Rave Unto the Year 2000 concert show that we would bring Paisley Park right into the homes of our Atlanta viewers and donors. One of our most successful premium offers to date for our on-air television programming is our unique VIP experiences at live concerts with Paul Simon, Carlos Santana, and none other than our beloved Prince. I personally took on the challenge to offer the ultimate fan experience, not just because I love Prince, but our team connected with local hotels, limousine car services, and venues, plus digital premiums, which was a new experience for us to bring to our donors. And I would like to spend the next few minutes describing how those efforts all came together, but I think it's better I just show you. So let's take a look at this. I can hear Prince, but we want to see Prince and the fans. So I think we're going to go ahead to that next slide. No problem. So we're having a little bit of a technical issue, and if we have time towards the end, we will play that for you all. But we're going to go ahead to the next slide in advance. All right. Well, fun fact about me, I am a proud alum of Historical Black College and University. That's right, HBCU, stand up. Morgan State University, proud alum here. So of course, when I learned about Stanley Nelson's Tell Them We Are Rising, there was no question that we would take a deeper dive into the conversation during our programming. In fact, this is an example of a programming that was not cut for pledge, but we coordinated with our programmers and our internal team to find natural pauses within the program to create breaks. And because Atlanta has such a large HBCU population with ties to Morehouse College, Spelman, and Clark University, I made sure that we coordinated with our team to locate local alumni to volunteer as our phone bank. And so you can see them in that top right corner. And they're wearing all their paraphernalia. I think you can see some of Howard University, Clark Atlanta, of course, me with my Morgan State, and it was an awesome experience. This is a great example of programming that celebrates African American history. It's a story of empowerment, resilience, and our ability to own our narrative, as opposed to the story that primarily focuses on the struggle of the African American community. And next slide. The list really does go on and on and on about the amount of work that our team at WPBA has and continues to do in bringing diverse content through our pledge programming, and well, as premium offers and experiences. These are just a few of the local partners, and some of which I've mentioned earlier. And I really want to emphasize how important it is to tie community partnerships to your pledge content. I find it that it lends credibility by providing platforms that you can leverage to extend your reach in your local community. And hey, look, perhaps you're stuck on, I don't know, how to create a new unique premium offer or how to approach a conversation that you feel disconnected from. Well, when you partner with these local community partners, they can not only provide resources, but pitch partners. And it's something that we've definitely utilized here at PBA. The sky is truly the limit where you can go when you have a partner along the way. I'm going to toss it back to Aisha.
All right, next slide. Sorry, y'all. I was looking for the link for for the Prince video because I'm going to post it in the chat as soon as I find it, because we have it on YouTube and I think you can watch it that way as well. Yes. But because anybody knows me, Prince is my other husband, so I want you to see that. And Jamie did such a good job on that. All right, back to the program. Results. So we're really proud of our results this year for on-air fundraising. We ended the year 16% above our initial target with an extra $367,000. Woo woo, that was great. We don't think that the DEI efforts generated all of that additional revenue. Certainly not, because there were lots of other factors, of course, that we were all dealing with, the pandemic, elections, and all of that. But we certainly think that being more intentional about diversity and inclusion and equity in how we present our on-air fundraising campaigns is making a difference in how the market perceives us and who our donor base is. Data. So that's definitely one of those areas where we have lots of work to do. While we have demographic data about our audience and who's listening to WABE and who's watching ATL-PBA from some of the traditional sources like Nielsen and other services like that, we certainly need to get more data about who's giving to the station, who our donors are. So we're looking at a CRM demographic overlay over top of our whole entire CRM. We also have started tracking comments, questions, feedback with a special interest code in our CRM when we receive questions from listeners who say, why are you talking about race so much? Isn't racism over? Or listeners who say, oh my God, thank you so much for talking about racism. We want to hear these conversations. We want to know what we can do to help make things better. So we're tracking all of that in our CRM with the code so that we can query it as well. The other thing that we know that we need to really focus on is engagement with the Latinx community, the Hispanic community here in Atlanta, and the Asian and Pacific Islander audience here. So we definitely have lots more work to do in that area. And of course, this is a learning process. So just when we think we have figured out something and we have a new smart approach or strategy, sometimes we realize, oh, there's some nuance to it. There's some aspect of it that we didn't think about or that was a blind spot for us. So that list of things that we are looking ahead at is going to continue to grow. So speaking of communities that we are learning a lot more about, we look around the system and we reach out to superstars who are doing great work in their community so that we can learn from them. And most definitely, Anessa Rios Azude is one of those people that we look to as a superstar that we most definitely we learned a lot from just in rehearsing and preparing for this session, but we're going to continue to learn from Anessa. She's at Houston Public Media doing amazing work, and we're so proud to have her in this conversation with us. Take it away, Anessa.
Thank you so much, Aisha and Jamie. You know, we talk a lot about finding mentors in the system, and we'll talk a little bit about staff representation, especially in at Houston Public Media. But for me, it was so important in the very beginning in my on-air fundraising and digital fundraising career to find mentors in the system. And Jamie and Aisha have been that for me. I happened to meet Jamie at a track conference. And the first thing that I noticed when we met is we gravitated each other because, quite frankly, there wasn't many people who looked like we do. So we bonded in this conversation. A lot of stations, thankfully, are having these conversations, and that's great. But the reality is these conversations have been had by many people of color for a very, very long time. So I'm glad that we can bring this to the forefront and really have this conversation. I want to start by just kind of outlining what Houston looks like. Houston, Texas. So I am in Texas. Houston's H-Town's my hometown. That's where I'm from. And it's kind of funny because when people think of Texas, they think of people, on horses and, there's stereotypes that come with living in Texas. But the reality is, and if we could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it, is that Houston has been named the most diverse city in America. I can relate so much to Atlanta, just hearing Aisha give the outline of that city, right? So that's how it is for Houston. We have this, very diverse population. If you look at this slide here, it really tells a story. We have the Kinder Institute, which is affiliated with Rice University. They did this amazing study. They do these studies on our demographic changes. And if you look here, you can see that the future is definitely people of color, BIPOC community. Obviously here we have all others, which I'm not really a fan of, but you can see how this is outlined, right? And so I make this point because a lot of times we hear in these settings, people say, well, I'm nervous about doing DEI content, right? You hear this in a system and in different conversations, right? Or we don't want to alienate any of our listeners. But I have to say, right, if your content and your messaging is not reflecting the voices in your community, it's not, you're not going to be ready for the future. And we can go to the next slide. And here you can just see, right, and I don't want to fly these too quickly, but you can see that in 2010 for us, our Hispanic community, you can see where it started to truly outweigh the white population. What this means is our world is changing. And so again, it's just very important that we all be ready for the future. And I really just wanted to show more about Greater Houston so you guys can know what that looks like. As far as our donor base leans white and more female. So it's something that we've definitely thought about when we're fundraising about a connected community because there is areas of opportunity there. And so that's what we're gonna be talking about today. Next slide. Awesome. So I wanted to talk about some messaging concepts with you all. So for us, for fundraising, right, we don't approach fundraising in a very transactional way, right? So we try not to just come on the air and say like, oh, give $10 and that's great. And you support programming, keep it very general. With us, it was very important that we embed DEI in a natural way because authentic diversity is super, super important. And it's about being transparent and people can see through, I would say performative efforts, right? So when we talk about Houston Public Media Celebrates, it was pretty much an initiative where we started building out these multimedia landing pages around DEI style celebratory content. So around, Women's History Month, the Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month. We had these really building this library of multimedia cultural pages. And then what we would do is anytime you would hear a spot in a fundraising, whether it be on the radio or television, you would hear something like, this is the kind of work you support. Multimedia landing pages for Hispanic Heritage Month, and this library of pages. And again, it's touching different communities, right? We're not just talking about Hispanic people or Black people. We're making sure that we're touching everyone, and we're really connecting with the entire community, because you don't want anyone to feel left out. And the next thing, I want to talk a little bit about equity and inclusion. This is more about some of the terms that we use, right? So we built out this whole collateral piece about voices of the communities we serve that really touched on the different, platforms that we have, our work in PBS Kids, our work when it comes to, the radio, some of our different radio programs. So that was a piece I wanted to include, just so you could kind of see that was built out as part of our collateral pieces. But then another thing, and I think this is something to bring up, and it reminds me, if you guys have any questions about these presentations, please put them in the chat box, because we at the end, Jay and team will facilitate answering some questions. So please just start populating those in there. Sorry, side note. But when we talk about some of the wording that we use, right? Oftentimes, I think especially in my experience, when I hear DEI content being referenced, I hear it in terms of underserved communities. So while we do know that underserved is often people of color, right? We know that's a reality. I think it's so important not to let that be the story, right? So the fact is that if you want people to gravitate to your content, they have to see themselves in it. So instead of talking about DEI and people of color only in terms of being underserved, try to think about telling the stories that really matter to them. And that's something that we do, I think, very well at Houston Public Media. So I wanted to make that distinction. Another thing that we do is community catalyst. So our special projects teams works with different partners around the city, whether it be, Improving Maternal Health Houston or our Collaborative for Children nonprofit groups. And they create this just shared mission to do great work in the city. For example, with Mothers First, it was a partnership with Improving Maternal Health Houston. And this was great collaboration where it was all about, talking about educating on maternal morbidity. And that was just a great conversation. And what we do on the fundraising side, right, we're not involved in the content production of that. But when we start having conversations with our members, it becomes very much you do your support, what you do, everything is powered by you. So those are just some great conversations. And then another thing I want to talk about when it comes to messaging concepts is staff representation. So I'm over the community fundraising and membership teams at Houston Public Media, and they are 100%, our team is 100% BIPOC. So Aisha, one of Aisha's slides earlier really spoke to me, because it had it's one thing to be included and it's another thing to be empowered to really build out your team. I was empowered to build out my team. Our managers or leaders here at Houston Public Media gave me the clearance to go ahead and create a team that I thought could lead us into the future and do really, really well. And one of the stories that really sticks out to me is we have her name is Corey Lee, and she's our manager of membership and communications. And after, we did our interview process, we had a hiring committee, and the hiring committee was naturally made up of 100%. It was all women and all people of color, like of various, races, ethnicities. And it was interesting because after, Corey was hired and we had a conversation after, she said, one of the reasons that I was drawn to the station, one of the reasons I felt like I could take the position is because I felt like there was tons of representation. It made me very comfortable to see myself reflected in the staff and in the hiring committee. I can't tell you enough how inspiring that was. And I think it says a lot about staff representation and how you can really go about making those moves in your teams and in your staff. And for us, right, it's help when it comes to on-air fundraising talent, right? Naturally, now we have a full team of fundraisers who look like the community that we serve, who look like Greater Houston. And, not only that, but just in our messaging, right? Aisha was talking about it earlier when you're reviewing scripting, and it's a different lens to see things, even when it comes to responding to members. We have members who will write in about, why this programming is super impactful. And it just adds a layer of true connection. So I wanted to share that with you guys. We can go to the next slide. So this slide just has a few, I'm not going to ask that we click into any of these, but it does have an example of some of this connected community these landing pages that we were talking about earlier. I know that this presentation is going to be shared with everyone post the conference. So you're going to have access to all of these to really dive into these different initiatives, how we laid out the pages. And this work was done by our creative services and marketing team. They are amazing. And I also wanted to highlight ICU, which is a new show that my friend Eddie Robinson hosts at Houston Public Media. You're also going to hear a little bit about that later. So you can keep going. Community Catalyst, again, you're going to have access to all of this. And I just want to make sure, I wanted to kind of include a slide where you can kind of click through and look at some of these Community Catalyst initiatives. I don't have favorites, but I wanted to include them. Alrighty, some fundraising techniques. This is going to be great. So I did want to play Eddie Robinson's ICU spot if we can get that pulled up. If we have any technical difficulties, I'll talk through it. But Eddie Robinson did a spot. And so for us, when it comes to the radio, we have live radio pledge. We have about 2 pledge drives in the year. These are like our normal live radio pledge drives. So Houston Public Media is PBS and NPR for Greater Houston. So we're a joint licensee. So during our pledge breaks, we have these, it's all mission based, right? We're very good about kind of, we would say like cleaning out the fat. We're very intentional with our messaging. And so, and around that, we have these year-long radio spots. So Eddie did a spot that kind of served as a dual purpose, right? He's marketing his show, which is great. We want that to be marketed with the public, but also fundraising at the same time, which is, it's, for lack of a better term, metaphor, it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? So can we get Eddie Robinson's ICU spot pulled up by chance?
I'm Eddie Robinson. This year, our community needed a place for meaningful dialogue more than ever. And our Houston Public Media newsroom and producers stepped up to that mission. If you made a gift in 2020, thank you. Because of you, we were able to reach our community with new programming like Town Square with Ernie Manous, Career Frontier, and there's a new show coming to you in the spring called I See You that I'll be hosting. Your gifts create these spaces for conversation, and we thank you for your generosity.
Yeah, Eddie is awesome. I smile every time I hear it. But there's also another clip. And when you guys eventually get the slideshow, it's a sample pledge break. And it's essentially kind of the same thing, but in a natural setting. I saw a question, someone asked about the music beds. We do the exact same thing at Houston Public Media on the radio. So they'll go into a radio, a break, and we'll have a music bed that kind of transitions in there, and it's awesome. And Eddie's really good about that. We share love of music. So please feel free to listen to those. Next slide. Lastly, and this is what I think almost lastly. So TV pledge for us is very important. So again, we share some of the same same methods as Atlanta public broadcasting, right? So with us, DEI efforts aren't just done during TV drives and are not just done during, cultural months or celebratory months. For us, it's a year-long effort. And we also, I heard Aisha mention that they code their DEI content. We do the same. So in our grids, we make sure that we indicate this is year-long content. For us, very controversial. We do not do live TV pledge drive fundraising at Houston Public Media. Instead, we opt for more interstitials, more spots, digital fundraising, and that's worked really, really well for us. And for one of the things I was talking about with authentic representation is, our Young Leaders Council truly looks like the community that we serve. I mean, it's an amazing to get to speak with them. And so again, it's very visual, right? What you see, authentic and connection. And so I wanted to show a spot created by our community fundraising producer. He's amazing. His name is Fujio, that he put together for the Young Leaders Council. And we got a lot of positive feedback for that.
My name is Shelby Mims.
My name is Cesar Droll.
I'm Catherine Clayton, and I'm a member of the Houston Public Media Young Leaders Council.
No matter your color, your creed, or your zip code, Houston Public Media arms all people with the information that they need to succeed.
We're able to weigh pros and cons and debate and solve these intractable problems together.
Now more than ever, we need to support unbiased local news sources to keep us informed during these dynamic times.
Together,
we do it.
The love of Houston.
I am Elizabeth Fletcher.
My name is Dr. Kirandeep Kaur.
My name is Aaron Perez. I'm truly honored to be a member of Houston Public Media Young Leaders Council.
Houston Public Media does its absolute best of ensuring that the story is told factually.
Houston Public Media helps form that connection by providing us with reliable and trustworthy information.
This is the reason why I joined the Young Leaders Council.
Together,
we do it
for the love of Houston.
Awesome. So as you can see, I feel like we need to put on a shirt, right? No matter your color, creed, your religion. I love that. That quote from one of our Young Leaders Council's members kind of resonates with me on a personal level. And then last but not least, just covering all media, right? Because especially as a fundraising professional, we can't leave anything out. So we always complete the loop. So in our membership thank you letters, in our email fundraising, on our donation form, anytime we can wrap around back to our DEI content, we do it, right? We do it and it resonates. It completes the circle. I think that'd be something great to do. If you have different fundraising methods, take the time to kind of just look and see if you're completing the circle with your messaging, because I think that that's very, very, very important. Moving forward for us, same thing. We're actually doing a demographic overlay as well on our donor base, and that's actually being done. We opted in through that with CDP because we are a CDP station. So I did want to just mention that because I saw that in the chat as well. But I mean, again, I'm so thankful to be on this call with everybody today, and truly, like I said, with Aisha and Jamie kind of spearheading, these DEI efforts and pledge, and truly our mentors, this has been a great experience. So thank you guys so much for letting me chat today.
Thank you so much, Anessa. I think, Jay, we're coming back to you to facilitate our Q&A. So while we wait for Jay Clayton to come on screen with us, I guess I'll go ahead and start with the Q&A, if that's okay. I don't see any notes in the private chat that say I can't. All right. So Anessa and Jamie, if you want to turn your camera and mic on, and we'll just start with some questions. All right. So question one here, part of question one. How are we capturing our demographic data? So Anessa mentioned CDP. I know that there are other vendors that do demographic overlays. So if you want to maybe email us, maybe we can share some more details about how to go about starting that conversation with your vendor. All right, we capture race, ethnicity, our donors through our donation form. Absolutely not. I would say don't do that. First of all, for two reasons. One, as a fundraiser, I would never ask for any information that didn't have anything to do with transaction. You don't want to lose money by adding a question that really is tangential to the process of giving. So I wouldn't add it for that reason, just first from a fundraising perspective. But just thinking about sometimes the baggage that comes along with race. There are some people who may want to volunteer that information, and then there's some people who might feel like, why are you asking me, and what does that have to do with my gift? Outside of a context, sort of how we talked about at the beginning when Jay and I said we have a mutual respect and trust of each other, so we feel comfortable talking about race and saying how we identify. But you don't have that with a donor. especially through a donation form. So I would say don't do that, but to do your demographic overlay, get the data after you get the money.
I just want to jump in real quick. I agree 100%. And also, if it's something you're interested in doing, like gathering your own demographic data, let's say you can't afford to do, budgetary, you can't do a CD, like a demographic overlay. Surveys always work. Any kind of survey in which you're doing a survey on your programming, to maybe you're emailing it to all of your members. That's a great way to do it. It could just be part of the demographic questions in the beginning, right? So that's just an alternative approach if that's information you're wanting to gather.
And then another thing that we do is we don't extrapolate race based on programs that people are supporting, but we extrapolate interest. So we have a lot of white viewers and listeners, especially on the TV side, who say to us, oh my God, I'm learning so much about African American history or Latino history or LGBTQ history or whatever it is through your content. Give me more of that. I want to learn more. I want to know how I can, deepen my understanding of the experiences of other people. So sometimes it's just about interest, understanding what your audience's interests are, and flagging that in your CRM. Go ahead,
And
Jamie.
I want to extend that too. Yeah, I would say too, I can't tell you how many times we've been at donor cultivation events, whether that was the Finding Your Roots or if I'm at a concert that we're partnering, and I just ask the donors. I just have a conversation. It goes such a long way to find out what they're interested. Why are you here? How did you hear about this? Is it, are you here because you love the music? Are you here because of, what is your tie to this this experience? And so that actually goes a really long way. And I find it that we get even better feedback that way. And those same people come back time and time and time again because they feel that personal tie and investment from us.
Yep.
So the next question, ladies, is how are you reaching out to people outside of your regular viewers / listeners? Are you using advertising in other areas, influencers? How are you doing that at your station?
Do you want to take that first, Jamie?
Sure. Well, actually, one unique experience that I did, I didn't get to share because it's just so much stuff we wanted to share with you all today. I actually worked with one of my colleagues who was producing a radio show for City Lights with Lois Rices, and David Oyelowo was in the studio. And we took full advantage of that opportunity. He's on Les Mis on PBS, and he's done other things. And we brought him into the TV studio, and I said, hey, do you have 15 minutes to give me? And he was already in town for something else, and we got him to do some support messaging for us. And so he was able to expand our reach as far as that film scene, which is so strong here and dominant in Atlanta, and his own platform. He was so easy to work with. And so for me, it kind of started this idea in my head, hey, every time we have special guests that are in the station or in maybe the Atlanta area, or if we're on a set or we're shooting something and that person can speak to an audience that expands our reach, well, then we need to shoot a support spot with them. And so part of me and Aisha's idea when it came to doing support spots and testimonials is to say, let's get different faces in front of the camera outside of our day-to-day host. And it doesn't have to be a celebrity. It just needs to be someone else. We've also used donors who are Cornerstone members. You heard Joe Barry Carroll. We've done support spots with him, former NBA player. We've done things with just Mom Next Door, who just loves the station and wants to continue to have a platform for her kids to be able to watch programming that she can trust and rely on. So it really is just a simple request, a simple ask. I can't tell you how many times Aisha and I joke around all the time. We're in our own paraphernalia from the station saying WABE, ATLPBA. I'm sure I have a mask right here. Actually, I do. And when I wear this out and about and people see it and they go, oh, you work for them? You know what? Do you love PBS? Do you love NPR? Would you want to, it starts so simple. It's just a simple conversation and it sparks this, these things.
I mean, there's just hitting on that, right? There's nothing more important than word of mouth marketing, right? Especially for public media. I mean, the reality is, right, we don't have these extensive advertising budgets, right? It's just not the case. So for us, Houston Public Media, we put together this Mission Ambassador program, which we're super proud of. And what it is, let's just say, from understanding, right? So let's say it's a social media ambassador program, right? So we have these people sign up to join this group they love us, they love our station, and they kind of agree to, like, anytime we send them a new program or something we really want to put a push behind, let's say we really wanted to activate certain communities, we really want to make sure it reaches people that could really benefit from it. They push that out on their social media and use the hashtag MyHPM. Very similar to the DEI influencers that you guys are utilizing. It's similar, right? So anyone can sign up, anyone can join, and we're working on an incentive program for this group of people because, of course, you want to keep them engaged and you want to make sure that they, know that they're doing well. But we, we use those snippets, those sharing snippets, and we put them in our collateral pieces, our impact reports. I mean, it really comes full circle. And what we find is anytime, and this just happens naturally, right? Anytime I see a new show and I love it, or a new program in life, I tell my friends, I tell my community, like, hey, y'all need to watch this. This is it, or you need to listen to this. This is it. I did it with ICU. I mean, ICU at Houston Public Media is one of those shows I was like, you guys really need to see it. And it just has a different impact, right? It stays with you. So that's my note on that.
And the person who asked that question, if you email me, I'll be glad to put you in touch with our Senior Vice President of Marketing. Her name is Sherry Day Scott. She is picking up some work around marketing in our community. We did actually some couple years ago, some focus groups specifically targeting African-American listeners and viewers, because we really wanted to understand what kind of content and programming that audience really wanted to see and hear from us, specifically the younger audience, the millennials. So Sherry is continuing with that work, and I'm sure she'd be glad to talk to you. Okay, this next question might be one of my favorites, and I want to give a special shout out to Jeff, and I believe you're at WIDA, Jeff, asked the question about, is there one specific show or area that you'd recommend starting with to attract more diverse donors on the PBS side? What would that show be? Okay, the reason why that's one of my favorite questions is because you're in DC. And the company that we use for those African ancestry DNA kits, AfricanAncestry.com, they're actually based in Washington, D.C. So you're right there. You could just walk down the street and go give her a shout out and build a whole relationship. So I actually started that partnership with African Ancestry at my former station many years ago, and we've just continued to build on it. But to answer your question more specifically, most definitely any of the Dr. Henry Louis Gates programs work really well for us in our market. It might be, I would guess in DC is probably the same, that content works well for you. All of the Stanley Nelson, we cherry pick episodes of American Masters, American Experience. We might even tap into Austin City Limits if there's a really cool, group of artists who represent the music scene or the diversity of our market. But we actually comb through the program book archives to find content that we think our audience would be most interested in. But by far, it's been the Henry Louis Gates stuff, the Stanley Nelson stuff. And then finding your roots. I saw somebody's note that finding your roots isn't working for you. It might be the thank you gift. Think about adding that DNA kit. The cost for that, if you just, fair market value of that is $300. You could pledge that $500, $1,000, and add an event to it. The president of the company will come to your station and pitch for you. I actually did my cheek swab, did my DNA test on the air because I wanted our audience to see how easy it was to do. I wanted to demonstrate the thank you gift because it was something different and new. And I think that helps too, to actually show them. But also that beautiful video that Jamie and Brianna created demonstrates not just the experience of doing the test, but what it means to people after they get the results. It is transformative. It is life-changing. And my goodness, what better way to connect with a donor than something that expands their whole horizon of how they think about their identity, and not just for themselves, but for their entire family. Those DNA kits give you results for your entire maternal side of your family or the entire paternal side of the family. There are some nuances to that we learned in the process. You need to be thoughtful about really focusing on the maternal side of the test, not the paternal test, because of the because of the experience of slavery and what that means for African Americans in terms of our genealogy. We could talk more about that in a separate conversation, but yes, so that is something that you need to think about when you're offering that as a thank you gift and putting your events together. One other quick note, there's an actual article on PBS Development blog about what we did that goes in more detail. Then we could share that in Socio. And we held on to results from the DNA kits until people attended the event. We did not send them their results in the mail like they normally would receive them, because we were forcing them to come to the cultivation event, because we wanted to see our donors, we wanted to interact with them, and we wanted that element of surprise. So we held on to the results until they attended the event.
That's awesome. On our end, we see Independent Lens do really, really well. So we work with the programming service, like Babette, Justin Harvey, to build out our grids for our PBS side of the house. And Independent Lens just does really well when it comes to attracting more of a diverse audience. Going through the highlight reel in my head of like my favorite programs where we did really well with that. Tell Them We Are Rising was huge for our station. We did really well with that. Many Rivers to Cross was another great one. And in anything, Dr. Henry Louis Gates, I mean, gangbusters. So just added commentary.
All right, so next question. I think we kind of touched on how do we know race. You can do the demographic overlay. Sexual preference, how do you know that without having a conversation? You would have to have a conversation, I guess, unless someone volunteered that. Millennial demographic, how effective is your outreach to them, whether it be through content or other means? I'll let the millennials speak to that.
I mean, I really want to shout out Tracy and Sherry, our new marketing team leads, because they seem to have really tapped into something like major. And I've started to see the change of how we're reaching out. I personally am a huge social media fan. So I've used my own platform, and I know several of us at our station have when we're doing content or we want people to be engaged. I mean, it goes a long way. Instagram, a quick post. I can tell you from the NPR side of things, we've also posted a lot on our WABE Instagram account. We're letting people know the news of the day differently than just hearing it on the shows like All Things Considered or Closer Look or, so forth. So it's just putting quick clips up. It's putting things on Facebook. It's using some of those promotional ads. Yes, our budget isn't largely dedicated to promotion on social, but I know that we are very intentional about what we post, when we post, and how we post it. And especially when it's like certain programming that we know it's going to, gear a certain type of excitement around, because of who it is, like if it's an Austin City Limits, or if it's a show, or if it's a Tiny Desk episode or something else that's going on that's relevant to what's happening in our Atlanta community, or like, what's going on in the world. So.
Okay, the next question is about how do we serve our audience, specifically in our programming for on-air fundraising and fundraising messaging, our audience who do not speak English as their first language. I can say what I've done in the past, and maybe others can jump in. Okay, so at my former station, we have been kind of going through some changes at my new station around how we use the studio and whether we're live or not live and pre-tape and all this stuff. But at my former station, we actually had hosts who were bilingual, multilingual, and one of my hosts in particular was amazing, but really struggled when she was trying to speak English perfectly. It wasn't that she couldn't speak English. Her first language was Spanish. She was a wonderful speaker, but was very self-conscious about her accent. And so what we worked on is just actually celebrating your accent. That was a whole reason why she was selected, is because she was different. She represented a community that we wanted to reach. And so we actually had bilingual pledge breaks. So that's, don't be afraid to, speak other languages in your pledge breaks. If you have listeners who are speaking other languages, let them hear their language. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see, where are we? I think we're almost, oh, Anessa, this is for you. What is the mission of the Young Leaders Council?
So difference between the mission ambassadors and the Young Leaders Council, because I know we're running out of time. The mission ambassadors, right, very community oriented. Everyone can join, great. The Young Leaders Council is a little more selective in that you do have to apply. Oftentimes comes with a nomination, and the idea is that this is the board of the future. So the concept is, in an effort to diversify our board as well, because that's so important. Everyone here, I know it's a big priority. The idea is that we build these relationships with our Young Leaders Council, who are often they're leaders in the community, right? They have industry leaders, right? Top of their industry, and funnel them into our board, our foundation board. And we've already done that with a couple of our Young Leaders Councils. So it's definitely about more advisory committee style, high level type thing. And I can actually, if you email me, whoever's asking more about Young Leaders Council, please feel free to send me an email and I can provide more information to you.
And then I think this is our last question. We got time. I think we got time for just one last one. Squeeze it in. Okay, so how big are our staffs? How big are our fundraising teams? And so I'll answer for PPA. Our team is quite small, actually, from my perspective, for all the work that we do and the number of members that we have. We teeter between 45,000, 55,000-ish members. And our team, we have one major gifts officer, one mid-level officer, myself and Jamie working on air fundraising for TV, one other person who helps us with Radio Pledge, and then in terms of like folks who ask for money, that's it. So the way we are organized in terms of our on-air pledge drives, everybody in our station is a fundraiser. We don't have the luxury of, we don't have a big enough team for us to say only those people do it. Like it would kill us. We can't do it by ourselves. We have to have the full team. And so Jay does a beautiful job of coming to the station virtually. We just did a virtual series of workshops, and before that, in-person workshops where we train everybody from the CEO to engineering. Everybody participates in it. It's required or semi-required. They're voluntold to attend the trainings with Jay, so they can really get a basic understanding of the best practices of on-air fundraising. And so we use our on-air hosts to pitch, we use staff to pitch, we use people from the community to pitch, to really expand our bench, because it's just too much for our small development team. But you don't have to have a team of a certain size to do DEI work. You just have to have the commitment. And you've got us to help you.
Yep.
Nessa, you want to talk about your team?
Very little, very small. I agree. And everyone's a fundraiser. So we literally started emailing that out and really talking about it around the station. Everyone is a fundraiser. We have a creative service team. So they build out our graphics for anything we do fundraising. And we have one fundraising producer and, does all the video and production work. And then we utilize a lot of different departments for the activation side of things. But on the side of things where we're asking for money, let's just say on a membership side, we have a 3-person membership team and a 2-person community fundraising team. And then there's me. So you can do the math there. That's 6 people. That's 6 people. And so again, right, smaller teams, I understand. And trust me, when you embed the work amongst different people and you're all on the same page and you have the same commitment and focus on the mission, it gets done. And it gets done pretty easily.
And can we just agree, small but mighty? I just have to say,
our hearts are big.
We make it happen.
Our hearts are big.
Yes.
Yes to that. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, Jay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry about the technical glitches here and there throughout. Thank you very much, Anessa, for all the wisdom you imparted, and Jamie and Aisha, you as well. This has been a tremendous session and couldn't be more timely. So thank you all very, very much. I want to also let you know that the session has been recorded, so you can come back right here and see it again or share it with other people on your team. Just come back to right where you are now, and you'll be able to get all of that stuff. Please rate the session. There is a rate now button on your screen. We would love to have your feedback. We use that stuff to build these conversations in these conferences. So please give us all the feedback that you would like to, and know that we will take it seriously. Check out our sponsors. I want to thank Promptly and all of them for their support of the session and the PMDMC. And remember to check out the contest as well, because you'll gather points for noting certain things along the way through the conference. And the person with the most points at the end gets free admission to next year's conference. So that's a little incentive there. So thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Anessa. Thank you, behind the scenes, Renzelia and Gail. And we'll see you soon at the next membership session. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.